This year's summer showcase left me with the strangest feeling about the space game genre, that it has somehow gone, well, somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't in a negative sense. There was certainly a load of great looking games there, but there's something profoundly deeper going on here, and I suspect a lot of you would have already noticed it, even if you haven't yet put it into words. So, here's the thing I want to figure out today, not in a doom and gloom way. I'm not here to tell you that gaming's dying or the good old days are over. There's something much more interesting going on here. What we saw this year then was a showcase full of space. It's just that they weren't the full kind of space games that some of us are actually missing. And once I worked out why, that is, what the difference even is between these games and the thing I was really looking forward to, I realised that something uniquely surprising about the last few years of this hobby. And yes, that's a window of time that I think might have tricked many of us. So stick with me, we're going to walk through these games, and they are good games. That's not the catch. The catch is actually that the AAA space games right now are not actually space games. Let me show you what I mean. So let's start with the biggest one, Exodus, and this is one I'm really looking forward to. This is the sci-fi RPG from Archetype Entertainment. It's a studio built largely on the people who made Mass Effect and Knights of the Old Republic. We've also got Matthew McConaughey involved here. He's playing a space cowboy, and the game looks absolutely gorgeous. It's also ambitious, it's third person, it's got a crew of companions that you can bond with along the way, and yes, there's even an octopus mercenary in there named Salt. And at the centre of all of this is the one big mechanic that the game is built upon, and that is time dilation. So here's the thing about space. When you're in space and you travel, and I mean really travel here, near the speed of light, or perhaps even faster I guess, and you go across those vast distances that space actually has, well, time itself bends. A few days for you whilst you're travelling might actually be years back home. So you leave on a mission, you come back, and the people you left behind have aged, or moved on, or perhaps they're gone. The world you return to isn't the one you left. And here's why I'm starting with Exodus in this video. Think about that story for a second. It's a story that you can't tell anywhere else. You can't tell a story like this on Earth. The time dilation story doesn't work in a fantasy world. It certainly doesn't work underwater or any other environment that you can dream up. At least you can't do that not without inventing magic or just faking it. In other words, this is a story that only works in space. You need the distances, you need the physics, you need the cold indifference of space itself. In other words, it is the very fabric of space. And this isn't just the backdrop to Exodus, it actually is Exodus. If you take space away, there is no Exodus game in its current form. The game simply can't be built. So keep a hold of that in your mind for the moment, because it turns out that this is a really important element about all these so-called space games that we saw during the summer showcase. So let's move on to Alien Isolation 2. So the original was a game I absolutely loved. Can't believe it's been 10 years ago. I think there is a video of this on my channel back in the old days. You can go and search that now, or later on if you're so inclined, and perhaps see older me when I wasn't quite so good at doing these type of videos. So yeah, Alien Isolation is one of the most beloved horror games ever made, and I do agree with that. I would actively say that's an objective fact, and a lot of the reason why was the setting. You were alone on a dying space station, and that's the thing that made it kind of unbearable. It wasn't just the alien, it was the whole environment, the fact that it was silence, that there was airlessness around in kind of the atmospheric sense, the fact that there was nowhere to go because outside the space station was the void and you were just trapped. Now the sequel takes you to a planet instead. You are on an isolated facility here. It's a storm-ravaged colony world. So you've got forests, you've got caverns, a wayland utility outpost on the surface there. And in the art director's words, they said this time we're releasing the alien on an unsuspecting colony world. And look, that's a completely fair choice, because Alien and Aliens has always lived on planets too. Some of the movies, like the original, were set inside spaceships, others down on planets. The colony in Aliens, for example, down on LV-426 was a big deal. They were down there trapped on the planet, of course. So I'm not mad about this. I think it's a very good choice. But notice what happened to space in this game. The first game, The Void, was kind of a part of the story, because even though it wasn't directly there, it still impacted the whole sense of isolation. But here it's, well, you've got weather, haven't you? You've got storms around you to enjoy, you've got big environments, and yes, this is a great looking horror survival game, but the horror survival would work on absolutely anywhere else. You could have it in an Antarctic base, for example, you could have it on a forest in the Amazon, or even in a bunker underground. The whole point is that whilst I think Aliens is recognisably a space franchise, space here has become a little bit removed. It's not actually a central core to the game. Again, it's not a complaint because Alien Isolation 2 is very much a game I'm looking forward to, but it's kind of interesting, the whole space theme. Contrast that with what I said just now about Exodus. You can't remove space from Exodus. And that kind of takes me on quite neatly to Star Trek. And we all know Star Trek, perhaps one of the most famous space franchises out there. The new game, called Shadow Frontier, features Ro Loran. You may know her from Star Trek The Next Generation, played by Michelle Forbes, who is back in the role. And incidentally, she was also Admiral Kane from Battlestar Galactica, very good in that role as well. So in this game, you answer a distress call near an uncharted planet, and the game opens up by crashing your ship. You wake up on the surface of the planet and you realise that the planet is actually a graveyard. More importantly, it is a graveyard of dead spaceships. And this is ironically quite interesting here, perhaps metaphorically, because not only is space taken away from you right at the initial moment where you crash your ship, you're also on a planet of other dead spaceships. There is no space here in perhaps one of the most famous space franchises of all time. That said, the game looks great. I'm kind of looking forward to this one. I do think a psychological horror game set in the Star Trek universe can work very well, and also think that Ro Loran is probably one of the best characters in Star Trek for that. So again, no complaints here, but also notice that contrast to Exodus. Again, you've got Star Trek here, they've removed space from it, and what you end up with is Shadow Frontier. Now there was another Star Trek game as well that was revealed. This is called Outposts Unknown. It opens up on the bridge of a starship, the USS Resonant, and then it sends you down to a planet to build a base. The game is a colony builder, and yes, this is potentially very nice because the Star Trek universe is a massive one, and there's some pretty famous planets in Star Trek. Even if you only look at Earth and Starfleet Academy, there's some nice big areas that you can think about in terms of base building. So I certainly think this game has some potential if it's played right, if it's built right. Base building games, you can go either way really, but it does look like a lot of good potential here. It's kind of like, to my eyes at least, Sims meets SimCity, with a whole nice proper story surrounding it as well. So yeah, I do like base building. I love Cities Skyline as well, one of my favourite games. And if we go back a bit further, SimCity was a classic, wasn't it? It went back when the original came out. I played that a lot on my Amiga. So yeah, it's not that I'm against these games. These are really nice titles. Kind of looking forward to seeing how this one actually plays out. But ultimately here you've got two Star Trek games. Star Trek, the franchise that is a starship, kind of take us out the whole bridge in the captain's chair at the warp. We did have Deep Space Nine as well, a space station, didn't we? But again, that was set in space. And yet one of the games here crashes you right at the beginning of the game. It takes away your ship in the opening cutscene, and the other parks you so that you go down and build on a planetary surface. Neither of these games lets you command a ship up in space. So this is something I kind of noticed, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It's not that these are bad games, far from it. In fact, these all have good potential, like I've said. And also, apparently, as I read this, I'm noticing that Outpost does have a demo right now. So that's something I'm going to be checking out after this video, and perhaps I'll release a video on that one later. And incidentally, if you have tried the demo for that, let me know about it in the comments section. So what I've noticed here then is that we keep being handed space as a place to set a game in. It's a backdrop, kind of like a skin. Let's think about other games. We saw Star Wars Galactic Racers, wasn't it? Was that the correct title? That's a racing game. We've got a horror game here. We've got a builder. You peel away the space layer, the space environment, and underneath the game is completely unchanged. Space as a setting isn't really doing any work here. It's kind of just like a backdrop. It's just the environment. It's kind of like a wallpaper. The only game out of all the games we saw from the AAA studios here, or AA studios, and I'll exclude the indie titles here because indie really does put space into space games, but the only exception here from the big studios is Exodus, and that's the one where you couldn't really remove space from the game, because if you do, you don't have Exodus. And incidentally, I don't want to end the video just there, because there is another title out there that's in very much the similar category. That is the Expanse, Osiris Reborn. This one is an RPG, and yes, I know, another RPG, another crew, another hub that we've got to walk through there. And on paper, this might feel like the same type of game as Exodus. And interestingly, Alcat brought in a consultant here, an astronaut, who commanded the International Space Station. And he asked him things like, what's the worst thing that can happen on a spacewalk? Why is silence more frightening when you're out there than having noise? What does it actually feel like to drift away from your ship into nothing? And all of this informs the game in the way it uses many of the features known to the Expanse series. So things like mag boots, recoil from weapons that can shove you backwards because, well, there's nothing to brace against in space, is there, in these environments? Firefights that can happen in near total silence because the vacuum it suppresses sound. There's no sound there, is there? And a ship that's more than just a menu because you launch your missions from it. It's a home, it's a hub, it's somewhere that's cramped but also lived in. And that, to me, makes this a space game as well. Keep in mind, not a space sim, that's something entirely different, a very different category. But yes, it does make it a space game because, well, you can't take space out of the Expanse Osiris Reborn. Apparently for the game, 0G, silence, the void pressing in everywhere on you, all of these things that make space feel like space, well, you can't remove space and still have them. And that ultimately is the answer to the question, isn't it? Where did all the space games go on this summer showcase? Well, it didn't go anywhere. And here's the conclusion I ultimately come to. For a few years, we had things like Starfield. No Man's Sky was big and finding its feet. It's still big, of course, but it's just one game out of many. Star Citizen was swallowing the world in terms of its ambition and its controversies as well, so a very loud one there. And these space games were very much front and centre, and it started to feel that that was the natural order of things, that space was a massive headline, a AAA act. But that was never the real natural order of the space game genre, was it? This was just a window, it was a short period of time, and it started to feel, in some areas at least, like that window has started to close. So now you can watch all these big shows and the spotlights are full of games that have space in them, but ultimately you can kind of peel that space off like a sticker, and the game itself still exists as the same game. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me that absence absolutely aches, because I remember where it felt like space games was finally becoming a full AAA category in the space game industry. But ultimately this isn't a loss, so you only have to look at the videos I've released this year so far, and you'll see that space games now, specifically space sims as well, are perhaps bigger than ever. There's absolutely loads of them being released, plenty more on the horizon, and all of them from indie and perhaps AA studios as well, and all of these look to be very good. I'm not going to recount them here, but just go check my channel, you'll know exactly what I mean. And as for the AAA games, they are still there, and I think the Expanse as well as Exodus are a great sign of that. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, do take care, and I'll catch you next time.